everybody. My name is Jim Rice, as Nancy said. I'm the properties manager here at YMCA Store Camps. And this time of the year, spring, we tap trees, maple trees in particular, for their sap to make maple syrup. So in the spring, basically what you're looking for is above freezing days, below freezing nights. So when you get below freezing nights, the sap runs down to the roots. When you get above freezing, the sap runs up to feed the buds in the tree, to feed the leaves. So what we do is we take advantage of that. We drill a hole into the tree, put a spile in there, and then you could drip that into a bucket. You could put a hose on there, run that into a 5-gallon bucket, which is what I do, sitting on the ground, and then I will harvest that sap probably about every 2 or 3 days, depending on the weather. And then at that point, I will take it and boil it down to syrup. So basically, when the sap comes out of the tree, I got a little sample here in a water bottle, but it looks like water, okay? So coming out of the tree, it's gonna look just like this. It's gonna range anywhere from 1 to 3% sugar content. And then to make it into syrup, which is this, you gotta get it to about 66% sugar. So that's a lot of boiling. So you gotta boil to evaporate all of that water until you get the right amount of sugar content to have maple syrup. So what I'm gonna do is take you guys through a little lesson on how I tap the trees and make all these lovely buckets appear at the bases, which Nancy herself has observed. So first thing I will do is I will locate me a maple tree. Okay, so this maple tree right here is what we call a sugar maple. The reason I know that is I can tell by the bark pattern. It's got the bigger flakes, they're really hard, you can't break them. Then if you look up the tree and you get a low enough branch like we have here, they got a small brown bud, and it's pointed kind of like a sugar cone. And that will tell me that this is a maple tree, as well as the opposing branches. So maple trees are one of the tree species that will have, where there's one branch, 100% of the time there's going to be a branch on the opposite side. Now you will find with some of the bigger, older trees, some of those won't have those, but they did at once upon a time, but the branch might have broken off or gotten cut off. But these are what they call opposing branching trees. So once I've determined that this is a maple tree, I will have a drill with a 3/8 drill bit, because my spiles require a 3/8 drill bit, and then I have a piece of tape on there set at 1.5 inches. So I know not to drill past that 1.5 inches. Now some of you might say, well, why do you only drill in 1.5 inches? Well, on all trees you got a living layer and then you have a dead layer. So basically what I want to do is I want to stay in the living layer. So that's the layer, what they call the sapwood, where the sap will actually run up and down the tree. So if I go beyond that, I will get into what they call the heartwood, which is actually dead, so the sap doesn't flow in that part of the tree. So knowing that, I got it set at 1.5 inches. I will look at the tree, try to find the sunniest side of the tree, because the sun is going to help warm the tree up quicker, which is going to make the sap flow. So ideally that's the south side, which I'm standing on the south side of the tree as we speak. And then I will basically just pick a location. I will take my drill and I'll hold it somewhat of an upward angle, because I want the sap to flow out. And at this point, I'll go and drill in. You see the nice white chips coming out. That tells me I'm still in the sapwood. I get to my tape, I'll pull it out. So there's nice, everything stayed nice and white. So I know I didn't get into the heartwood of the tree. Make sure the hole is nice and clean. Okay, so now I got a nice clean hole. I don't know if you can see this, but it's all white wood. It's not flowing real good right now because the temperature is actually below freezing. So this tree will not be flowing at this point. And then I will get my spile and my hose. As I said earlier in the video, I run my hoses directly into a bucket. Some folks will actually take this blue part here, which we call a spile, you pound that into the tree without a hose, they'll hang a bucket over it, and then it'll just drip into a bucket. I choose to go with the hose option, so therefore, when I run it into my bucket, which I run it into the side, and then I put my lid on it, I don't have to worry about rainwater getting in there. So I have 100% pure sap. So now at this point, I'll grab my hammer, and there's a reason why they call this tapping. You don't want to really hammer the tapping. You basically just want to tap it, and as you're tapping it, you want to listen, because the sound, the tone is going to change, which tells you the tap is seated. So you don't want to over tap it, because it'll actually crack the bark, and then your sap will leak above or below your spile. Did you hear that? So it went from a real high tick to a thud. So that tells me my tap is seated. So at that point, I stop. I don't hit it anymore, but I'm hitting it very lightly. And then at this point, I'll take my bucket, I'll run the tube in the side, make sure it's got a nice downward pitch. Take my lid, I'll snap my lid on. Ta-da! Now I'm ready to collect sap. Lid being on, I get no debris from the tree, I get no rainwater. If a bird decides to land up there, I don't get any of his treats in there, and I got nice clean sap. Then at this point, what I would do is, like I said, depending on the weather, it might be every day, it might be every 2 days, it might be every 3 days, weather depending, I will come back, I will check this bucket, I will check all of my buckets, which in particular I'm running about 75 taps. 75 taps on the south side of camp, which generally is producing roughly about 160 gallons of sap every time I collect. And some of you might say, wow, that's a lot of sap. But you got to think, it takes 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. So 160 gallons of sap sounds like a lot, but in theory, roughly that's about 4 gallons of finished product, which would be your syrup. Alright, so we want to...
Yeah, Jim, if you can maybe take us over to where some of your other trees are.
Absolutely. Let's do that.
It's really windy.
It's freezing.
All right, we're exploring, going across the wind tundra here. Get you over to where you can see some of our other trees that Jim's got going. Jim, how long will you do this process for?
We will continue this process until we don't get those freezing nights. Well, basically, yeah, freezing nights. Freezing nights are what's key. If you don't get the freezing nights, the sap stops flowing, because it will actually go up to feed the buds, and then it will just stay up there. It won't come back down.
What does sap do for the trees? If we're taking it away from the trees, will that hurt the trees, Jim?
No, they've been. This has been done for centuries. It was actually discovered by the settlers here. They accidentally bumped the tree and then realized the liquid that was coming out of the tree had a sweetness to it. So at that point they started gathering it, and what they would do is they would actually boil it down. So when you do maple syrup, your first stage you come to will be syrup, which will be 66 bricks. If you choose, you can continue boiling it beyond that, and you'll get to what they will use for maple candy. But what the settlers did back in the day is they would actually boil it to the point beyond that, which would be maple sugar, and they would actually create sugar blocks and then keep those sugar blocks and use them throughout the year to sweeten things up.
All right, Jim, we're gonna see if you can, any final things you wanna show us about your maple syruping? This is awesome.
So, like I said, about every 2 to 3 days, I'll come and collect those. I got 55-gallon drums that I'll dump those into. I filter those going into the bucket, and then obviously multiple filterings throughout the boiling process. And yeah, you can see 6 of the buckets over here. And then I got several over there, and then over.
So you have 75 buckets around camp that look like this.
Roughly.
75 trees, or 75 buckets, because some of them I see have two buckets on them.
Correct. So yeah, actually there'll be about 50 buckets.
Wow.
So I'm
You do this all by yourself, Jim?
Most of the time. I do get some help from my wife. Last night she came out and actually helped me collect, and last night was a good night. We actually collected 175 gallons of sap. So.
And you're boiling this all down at your house?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my goodness, okay.
Hey guys, so today is Sunday, March 7th. We're doing our collection, and all of my buckets on this side, because they're in direct sunlight, are running really well, and they're all overflowing. So the last time I collected was on Wednesday, but we've had a lot of freezing weather, so I didn't think we'd have much of a flow, but it turns out I was wrong. We got a lot of flow. But that's why we tap on the side of the tree that's got the sunlight, because it warms the tree up quicker, which causes the sap to run. And then I generally take all the ice out, because in sap, the water is what tends to freeze. All right, so that's the part of the collection. Then we'll dump it in our bin. I got a t-shirt stretch over the top to filter out any bugs or tree bark or anything that got into the bucket. So therefore, once it goes through the t-shirt, I'll have nice clean sap. All right, guys, we're back. We're going to go over some details in regards to reverse osmosis. So it's a process that I do with the sap. A lot of other people do it. A lot of folks don't do it. So reverse osmosis is what this little thing is right here. And what it is doing is it's sucking the raw sap out of my bucket. It'll go through this tube. Then it's going to go through a pre-filter. And then it's got 3 reverse osmosis membranes. So what that's going to do is it's going to pull water out of the sap. So my sap, let's say it's 3% sugar, sitting in the blue barrel from collection. Once it goes through this reverse osmosis, it's now going to double that sugar content. So I was 3% to begin with, now I'll be at 6%. So now I don't have to boil off as much water. But if you look at this little barrel right here, and I've actually taken some out of there, but that's pure water. Clean, you can drink it. I tend to keep it to clean my equipment. That's what they recommend. So they actually call this permeate. So this is water that was sucked out of the sap. And then the other part, which would be your concentrate, is actually going into the steamer inside of the shed, which I showed you guys last night, but we'll go back around and show you that again. So yeah, this is actually my drain line up here, which we'll get an inside look at that. And then the water that's coming from the reverse osmosis is actually draining into this bucket now.
Is that because the other one's full?
That one was full, but I did take some of it to clean my pan. I'll use this to clean my reverse osmosis. So after I run so many gallons through it, so roughly 200 gallons, once I run 200 gallons of sap through it, I've got to clean it or do a flush. So then I'll hook this blue line coming from the sap up to my permeate water, which is nice, fresh, clean water, and I'll use that to clean my bucket or clean my system. And then also, when I'm done boiling, I'll use this water to clean my pan. So that's just a little detail on the reverse osmosis, and from here we'll go into the shed. So you've seen the water, the pure water that's coming off. Now we'll go see the concentrate that's coming off the other side. So now we're inside, and last night you guys got a little look at the evaporation process, and as you can see, it's going on again. It's going to kind of be a continuous thing to get that sugar content up. And then the concentrate from the reverse osmosis. So you saw the blue line outside, and this is the concentrated sap that's coming back in at a higher sugar content. Generally, like I said, it will at least double the sugar content. And by all the water that that unit pulls off, that's all water that I do not have to evaporate out of this pan. So then if we scroll down here, so probably 8-10 hours from now, when this gets to the level that I like it, this little handy dandy valve, we won't use this bucket. This is basically my defoaming bucket. So as we're boiling, you'll get this foam that develops on the top. So you'll want to scoop that off. Because basically what that is just impurities that's in the sap, sugar, sand, all stuff that you eventually will filter out. But so by skimming it, it just helps save on the filtering process, so you don't have to wash your filters as much when you're filtering the actual syrup. So that's what that bucket's for, is to skim the foam off. And then when this gets down to where I would like it, I actually have my filter and everything, which is outside. I'll put underneath there just at that point, and then I'll have a food grade pot that I'll put underneath there. And then I'll open this valve up, and all that material will drain through my filter and then into a food grade pot, which then I would transfer out and do the finished product. Gonna touch base a little bit on what we do with the sap after we collected it. So right here, we're in the finishing down stages. So we boiled it on a bigger evaporator, got it down to pretty close, and then at that point I pull it off and I put it in the smaller pan, and then boil it down to 66 bricks. But with this little machine right here, what I will do is I'll use the ladle. Matter of fact, I'll go ahead and do that. So I go ahead and ladle this in this little cup. Make sure it's full. Put this over here. And this is called a hydrometer. So it's got two red lines, and when it floats at that top red line, that tells me I'm at 66 bricks, which would be classified as syrup. So I'll let it go, I'll give it a spin, and it's going just below it. So we're not quite there yet. So as soon as it floats with that red line at the top, then that tells me we're at syrup. So right now, we're probably a couple minutes away from a finished product. So when that's ready, we'll bring you guys back and kind of show you the filtering process, and then the bottling process as well. Thanks. All right, guys, we're back. I think we have a product that is ready to go. And we're going to give it one more quick check and see if we're at that top red line. And indeed we are. So then at this point, I'll go ahead and turn the fire off. So we are at syrup stage. Put that back in there gently so it won't break it to get his glass. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to filter it through, I got 5 of these in there. This is a pre-filter. And if I take all of 5 of these pre-filters out, the filter that's left is what they call an Orlon filter. And that's pretty heavy cotton. So the purpose of the pre-filters is to stop that Orlon filter from clogging. And at this point, I'll put my pan underneath and I'm going to catch my syrup in. And everything is hot, so you definitely want to wear little oven mitts. Here. And I'm just going to pour it through this filter. And what this is going to do is it's going to pull out all of the sugar sand. So if you look in the pan, you can kind of see that brown ring on there. That's all sugar sand and different minerals from the trees. So basically what these filters are going to do is pull all of that out. So we'll have nice crystal clear syrup. Okay. And we'll bring you guys back in a little bit to show you the filtered product. Thanks. Alright guys, so now we're to the jarring stage. So we've got our syrup filtered. And sometimes I'll ladle it, but we got a small enough batch here, I'll actually just pour it in. And be careful not to overfill it. Okay, so we get that part done. Then what I'll do is take this out, set this over here. I get a piece of paper towel, and then at this point I gotta wipe the lid, or the rim, just to make sure there's no syrup on there. So just the edge. And then we'll put the seal and the ring. Tighten her down. Make sure it's straight. And then bring it over here. A little warm. And we'll set it here. And then basically at this point we just let them cool. And then all the lids are sucked down, which tells us they're sealed, and we're good to go. So that's the process. Thank you guys very much for being interested in this, and it was nice showing my passion. Thanks.